Hey, what's up guys? Aaron Bennett here. In this video, breaking down Voyager's town hall that happened today. This is the UCC Unsecured Creditors Committee town hall. So if you want to get the latest updates with Voyager, if you have money locked in their platform, this is the video you want to watch. So this town hall is 51 minutes long. I will pause it and explain to you all the important things that are happening. So right here, Darren, he says he represents the law firm that are representing the UCC, the unsecured creditors. Chuck here is a partner of Darren, also working at the law firm that is representing the UCC. Greg Steinman is also a part of the law firm. I think he's at a separate law firm, but they are all representing the UCC. Michael here is from FTI, which is the committee's financial advisor. And Jason Raznick is the chairman of the creditors committee. So Darren starts out by saying he sympathizes with everybody who put a lot of money, possibly their life savings, into Voyager. There are 100,000 people basically affected by this. They have read all of our letters. So Darren's going to start out by going over some general bankruptcy concepts and then diving into more specific questions that most people want, like when are we going to get our crypto back? Darren is saying that they represent the committee, not individual people inside of Voyager. So what he is saying in this video should not be construed as legal advice, nor should it be taken as individual legal advice for yourself. He does say, I think covering his butt, that if you want to retain your own personal counsel, you should do so. So Darren says something interesting. He says that the committee was provided sensitive, confidential information from Voyager, but they can't disclose everything, and he and the rest of the committee, the UCC, has actually signed like an NDA. So he says that can be a little bit confusing and frustrating, but he says that is commonplace for bankruptcy proceedings. For example, he says the exact bidders who may be buying Voyager's assets or things like that need to be basically not public information right now. But he did say that they have received and are receiving a ton of information, enough information to make the proper decisions and basically work in all the creditors' best interests. Darren said that he hopes to build more trust with everybody with these town halls that will apparently be in the future as well, and know that they are doing everything in their power to fight for the creditors, which is like you and I if you have crypto on their platform. So now Jason's talking, and he is the head of the committee, basically the lead person involved in the UCC. He had a ton of money in Voyager. He says he understands that people saw Voyager as like a savings account, and he says that his job and the committee's job is to get as much money as possible back to the creditors. Jason said that the committee members like himself are not paid to be on the committee, but he says the hundreds of hours that he has committed to this already is worth it. His goals are, again, to get the most money back to us, the creditors, and also in the shortest amount of time. So Darren wants to clarify what the creditors committee is and how it is formed, and if there is any influence like from Voyager to pick people on the committee. Darren says that that is not the case regarding any like influence from Voyager, or if there's any type of, issues going on regarding who gets picked. So I will read through this slide. He's basically going over it here. The committee was appointed by the Office of the United States Trustee, which is an arm of the U.S. Department of Justice. The committee represents the interests of all unsecured creditors. The committee is comprised of 7 creditors, all of whom are Voyager customers. The committee has an obligation to keep certain information confidential. To the extent possible, the committee will continue to share information with the unsecured creditor body through Twitter and regularly scheduled town halls. Darren does mention that some of the people on the committee have millions of dollars of crypto, so the larger accounts, and some of them have less. So there is a range of how much people have invested inside of Voyager. He clarifies that the U.S. trustee decided who to basically add to the committee or who to approve for the committee, and Voyager had zero influence over those decisions. Darren says that once the committee was formed, they had to interview different law offices to represent them, and Darren and his firm were one of 10 that they interviewed, and obviously they picked them, similar to what happened with Celsius as well. So far, this creditors committee, this slide also applies to Celsius if you also have money there as well. The committee also voted on who to use for their financial advisor, which is FTI, after they also interviewed different firms and they voted on which one they wanted. So Chuck mentions that Chapter 11 is a very good process when a company is insolvent, and he says, yes, indeed, Voyager is insolvent. They do not have enough crypto to satisfy all of the claims. So far, all of these slides have to do with Celsius again. I'll just kind of reestablish that. What Chuck is saying also applies to Celsius. He reminds people that with Chapter 11, the company, meaning in this case Voyager, can still operate and kind of have protection from individuals filing their own lawsuits and claims. Chuck says that one of the reasons they're using Chapter 11 is because if they just opened withdrawals, since they're insolvent, basically the people who acted first would be the ones who would get all their crypto out, and those who acted later would get nothing. So Chapter 11, he's explaining, kind of resolves that problem. So Chuck says that not all Chapter 11s result in a reorganization of a company that still exists after Chapter 11. Sometimes the decision is to liquidate all the assets and repay the creditors. In that case, he talks about a liquidation trust that takes access, or basically holds all of this crypto, and then they are responsible for distributing that crypto to the creditors. He also says that if there is a liquidation, the UCC will basically control or have say over this crypto, so there isn't any influence from Voyager. He's basically saying the process of Chapter 11, if it goes into liquidation, how that works, who controls the crypto. So here it says, when the company files for bankruptcy, the company cannot continue making payments on debt in the ordinary course of business without seeking bankruptcy court approval. So we know this from Celsius as well. When they declared bankruptcy, they can't continue to pay out as if business was normal. Everything has to be approved. He gives the example of if Voyager, say, owed $1 million to their landlord, they could not just pay anybody or pay their landlord $1 million after they filed for Chapter 11. It would have to be approved. And that's why they file here a number of motions to continue operating. And this happened with Celsius as well. Basically, we saw a number of motions saying, hey, we need to pay our employees, we need to pay our rent, all of these expenses to keep operations flowing. And basically, the law firm that Chuck represents was going over these motions, basically saying, hey, do we agree with these motions that they have to pay so-and-so $5 million? Why? Who is this person? Because is that going to take money away from the creditors? So that's what Chuck and the people at his law firm really had to sort through very quickly. Chuck says that there are a lot of communications between his firm and Voyager that are not on the official court docket. So again, this applies to Celsius as well. There are a lot of things that they just try to work out between the two of them. For example, if Voyager made a motion to pay somebody and Chuck is like, no, that's not going to work, they may just try to communicate about that, and maybe it doesn't have to be something formal. It can just be something that they agree upon behind the scenes. And Chuck says that saves money that will be paid out to the creditors because it does not need to be litigated inside of court and it basically having to pay a bunch of lawyers to get to the bottom of it. But if Voyager does not agree to something, they will litigate it and they will fight it to get more money for us, the creditors. So now we're talking about the sale process. It starts out saying Voyager is pursuing a process to sell the company or some of its assets. So Darren says that most of us saw FTX's bid, but there have been many, many other bids. And he says that all bids right here are due on or before August 26th, with the auction to occur on August 29th. It says here the committee, the UCC, is actively involved in the sale process and has consultation rights over effectively all facets of the sale as set forth in the bidding procedures that were approved on August 4th. So the UCC is talking with FTX or whoever else may be interested in purchasing some of Voyager's assets. Darren says that the goal is to maximize the amount of money that the creditors get, plain and simple. But he can't share everything exactly as they're happening. Basically, that could affect how much they get for different parts of Voyager. So again, there are some pieces of information coming out, like who is bidding, how much they're bidding, that right now they can't just share everything publicly, but this is all for our best interest. So Darren said that the FTX offer is the lowest actual offer that they received. So despite people saying, hey, just take the offer, come on, give us our crypto back, even if there's a haircut, blah, 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 Darren's like, no, we want to wait because that's actually a pretty bad offer. So Darren says that's why they want to have a formal process of bidding on their assets, not just whoever bids first gets it. So Darren said they really expedited how fast they are working with Voyager to go through this sale and a bidding process. So Chuck is talking about the exclusivity of the debtor having 120 days after the Chapter 11 is filed to propose a plan of reorganization, but he does say that there are some circumstances that would allow that exclusivity period to be shortened. So he talks about what debtors can do if they want to share an option for reorganization. It says that the creditors must be sent a, quote, disclosure statement, which must be approved by the bankruptcy court and must contain adequate info to enable creditors like you and I to make an informed decision whether to vote to accept the plan. A plan must be voted on by the various classes of creditors and approved by the bankruptcy court as meeting the legal requirements of the bankruptcy code. So this disclosure statement that can be sent out to the creditors will have all of the financial information, liquidation analysis, a discussion of the debtor's go-forward business, an assessment of the feasibility of the proposed plan, and a description of the plan. So he's talking about what the statement will have if it gets sent out to creditors like myself. So after the creditor creates this disclosure statement, the court will decide whether or not it has all the information that will allow a creditor like myself to vote. Basically, did they give everything they need for the average person, not a lawyer, the average Joe, to understand what's happening in plain English? And is this good enough to basically let normal people like myself vote on it? And if the court says, yes, it's good enough, this disclosure statement is proper, then they can start soliciting votes. So Chuck is talking about how many people would need to vote in favor of a plan for it to be confirmed. Again, all of this stuff is not happening right now, but this is just sharing what will probably be happening in the coming months. Chuck also says something very interesting. He says the plan of reorganization has to give the creditors at least as much crypto or USD value, not quite sure if they're talking crypto or USD, but at least as much money as if they were to do a Chapter 7 and just liquidate everything. So he says that the plan needs to be as good as a Chapter 7 liquidation. So Chuck says that they negotiated a very aggressive timeline that will make sure they have a plan by the end of October. It says right here, the plan objection deadline and voting deadline are October 24th. Previously, about 3 weeks later, November 16th, so they got that even sooner. And again, the quicker these proceedings go on, the more money the creditors get back because the less money are paid to lawyers. And Chuck said that may sound like a long time, but he says that in bankruptcy terms and bankruptcy time, that is incredibly quick. Chuck also says that if the plan from Voyager is not in the best interest of creditors, it doesn't mean they're going to accept it just because they want to finish this soon and, get out of this case. They said basically they're only going to accept it if it's in the best interest of all of us. They're not just going to accept something because it's quick. So once the plan is approved, basically the committee, the UCC, will issue a letter recommending whether creditors should vote to reject or accept the plan. So the committee will basically say, hey, we've looked into this plan. We think it's good or bad. So they're kind of the experts in this case. And Chuck and his team are being hired to basically say, hey, is this a good idea from Voyager, right? Like, is Voyager's plan something that the creditors, like myself, should vote on? Chuck also says that if you are in Voyager, to follow the UCC's Twitter page, which I will try to find and put in the description of this video. So Mike's talking about the financial snapshot now. He does say it is still preliminary. As you can see here, there are some TBD lines in the assets, like the 3AC loan recovery, if there is a loan recovery, other causes of action, and other recoverable assets. And this balance sheet shows the prices right here as of June 30th. So when they're talking about the crypto loaned and the crypto held, these will obviously change as the price of crypto changes. So he starts out by saying that Voyager, had $104 million in cash, and this will go down as the proceedings continue and they have to pay all the legal fees. But this does not include, he says, all the USD that were held in the bank, which they now are basically allowing people to slowly withdraw. Or actually, the company is going to begin accepting the withdrawal requests this week for the US dollars. So here they loaned $470 million, but this excludes the Three Arrows Capital loan. And they held around $685 million of crypto as of June 30th. So as of June 30th, their assets were around $1.26 billion, but this does not include any crypto recovery from 3AC, other causes of action, and other recoverable assets. Now, the customer claims right now are about $1.8 billion. And he talks about some other unsecured claims that are still being determined how much they are. So let me read what we have here on the left. It says, as of 6/30, June 30th, Voyager had a loan portfolio of $471 million, which you can see again right over here, excluding loans to 3AC, which were valued at $654 million. So that could be some of the money right here that they get back from the loan recovery. And Voyager held another $685 million in crypto assets for a total estimation of about $1.156 million in crypto. So this number is lower than this number because they do not include the total cash. As of 6/30, there is $1.81 million in estimated customer claims. You can see right down here, and TBD amount of other general unsecured claims. And Darren says, as of June 30th, the whole was around $550 million. So we know that Celsius had a very large hole of over $1 billion. And here Darren says that the hole right now is about $500 million. And Darren does say that these numbers will change, obviously, as the price of crypto assets do change, and if any recoveries or other recoverable assets come about here. Darren says that he understands that most people, again, put money inside of Voyager as a savings account, your wedding account, your retirement account. This is not like big businesses that are the creditors, like a lot of bankruptcy cases. These are individuals like you and I, and he says he takes that very seriously, and he realizes that's different than, again, like giant businesses. So Darren says they're looking at all options to provide you and I some payments, to get some money, to get some crypto back before the actual plan is approved in court. That's what these interim distributions mean. Darren does say that interim distributions are basically unheard of inside of bankruptcy cases, but he thinks there are some circumstances like what we shared and basically all the letters that were written in to justify interim distributions as something that is really necessary here. And this slide, what Darren's talking about, most likely is going to apply directly to Celsius as well. Darren does say that only Voyager can decide on interim distributions. The UCC, Darren's company, they can't force any. This has to come from Voyager, and they are working with Voyager, talking with Voyager to hopefully make that happen. Darren says there's no guarantee though, so basically don't get your hopes up, and that he doesn't know if it can happen faster than the plan timeline. Basically, the plan gets approved and then we start getting our crypto back. So here he's talking about a special committee investigation. I'll just read it very quickly. Before Voyager filed for bankruptcy, Voyager's board of directors appointed a special committee of independent directors to conduct an investigation of certain events that occurred prior to the BK filing, like the loan with Three Arrows Capital. This special committee has retained its own counsel, which is conducting this investigation. Depending on the results of the investigation, Voyager may seek to release certain third parties, including directors and officers, from liability under the Chapter 11 plan. Claims against these third parties could be a potential source of recovery for creditors. Accordingly, the committee is running a parallel investigation to the special committee's investigation to determine the viability of claims that could potentially be released. So Darren says that he and the committee believe that there are a number of individuals that are liable for wrongdoing. And again, this special committee retained its own counsel, which is conducting this investigation. So what they're saying is kind of complicated. Basically, the creditors committee with Darren and this special committee, they're both looking into potential wrongdoings, insiders, people that made bad decisions. Now, if Darren and the special committee disagree that there were certain things that happened and they don't agree, then Darren will basically suggest to us, the creditors, to vote against certain things that would release these insiders. So kind of confusing. Basically, all you got to know is that there are investigations going on, and when we need to make a decision on something, we will know. It will be very, very clear. We'll get letters from Darren and the team. We'll get emails. We'll get Twitter updates. We'll get everything talking about exactly what we need to vote on, what's going on, and this is just kind of sharing what's happening behind the scenes. And Darren says the best way to keep afloat of what's happening is getting on these town halls, which I will be covering, and also following them on Twitter. And this is their official Twitter. So it is very simple. It is VoyagerUCC. So go ahead and follow them if you are on Twitter. So we're going to go over some questions now. Darren says that they plan to have town halls every 2 to 3 weeks or so. So somebody asked about filing claims. Should you file a claim? Basically, they said they can't give individual legal advice, which we know, but there is a place here on Stretto to file a claim. And it says forms are also available on the committee's website right here. The deadline to submit a proof of claim right here is 5 p.m. Eastern time on October 3rd. So we still have a long time. There's no rush, right? So I will be giving you guys updates and, make sure to follow them on Twitter as well. So Darren says in about a week, Voyager will be filing the schedule, which will list all of the creditors and how much Voyager owes them. He also says that Voyager will be mailing proof of claim forms to everybody, all of the creditors. And Darren said the form that we get sent from Voyager will most likely be pre-populated with our information and also how much money Voyager owes us. So basically Darren's saying that most of us probably won't need to file a claim if everything is as it should be when we get these claim forms from Voyager. If we don't get a proof of claim from Voyager, we can contact Stretto. And also if you do file a claim, you do want to say how much crypto you have and how much US dollars you have. But again, he says if you want to retain your own counsel to talk to a lawyer on your behalf, he suggests you do so because this is not legal advice. So Darren's talking about the plan that Voyager is trying to propose can very much change depending on the sale process that's going to be taking effect and we're going to see over the next couple weeks. So these are 3 plan options. Basically, we have the liquidating plan right here. Voyager liquidates all assets, winds down operations, and returns remaining assets to the creditors. Then we have the sale option. A third party like FTX, for example, would acquire Voyager's assets and moves the customers to a third-party platform. So that would be like a sale. And then the third option would be some sort of reorganization. Reorganized Voyager resumes operations either with or without support from a third party. The current file claim for Voyager is to give all the crypto they have back to the creditors. So this is actually a good thing. This is what they want to do, is obviously give the crypto back. And proceeds that they get from 3AC would also be used to pay customers. So this first plan here is basically what Voyager is proposing, which I just talked about, basically winding down, giving everybody their crypto. But if there is a sale option 2, that would be like FTX, Darren does think that still the crypto that Voyager has will be given back to the customers. So the question about how will I get my crypto back right here, Darren says that usually the plan has to become effective, like basically what is going to happen. That needs to be set in stone before most people get their crypto back. Right now, the timeline for Voyager is confirming a plan the end of October. So November, Darren says, is right now the earliest that they can consider really giving the customers like myself their crypto back. He does say that these dates can change, bankruptcies are fluid, and they are trying to get some crypto back to us earlier. So the next question is, can creditors be made whole? He's talking about if there was some sort of acquisition, there could be a way for that to happen. If there is some reorganization and then customers receive equity, that could be another way that customers could be made whole. And there could be other claims pursued against Voyager, and then something like a liquidation trust could occur, and then that crypto could be given back to creditors. So there's 3 ways that potentially Voyager customers could be made whole even after they receive the distributions from the plan. So those are 3 ways that the customers could get more crypto beyond what Voyager has right now in its accounts. The question about investigating directors and officers, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but there is a separate investigation happening, and any crypto or any money that can be claimed, if there were any officers or directors that were doing things that were illegal or sketchy or whatever, that will be crypto that creditors will get back. And will Voyager continue to exist after the BK concludes? That really depends on what happens. If there's an acquisition, if there's a reorganization, then maybe. And ultimately, we don't know yet. What happens to VGX? Darren basically says we do not know yet. So talking about withdrawing USD, we know that Voyager has sent emails to people who have USD to basically tell them, hey, you can begin to withdraw your USD at a certain time. I believe it's going to be next week. So people are confused. Well, what about USDC? Why can't I withdraw that if people are getting their US dollars back? Darren is talking about the trust estate, how things were filed, how things were held, and basically just how it was all organized. So there's a reason, unfortunately, that, USD, you can get your money out, but USDC, you can't because it's a part of the bankruptcy estate, I believe. And essentially, the way that Voyager held crypto, USDC, versus cash was different. It was a different account. There were different laws and rules regarding how they held crypto versus USD. So that is why. He says if you were having issues withdrawing your USD or you never got an email from Voyager, you can reach out to the trust on Twitter or through their email, which I believe is on their Twitter as well. So now a question about staking. So Voyager filed a motion to continue its staking practices, but the committee had some objections to this. So basically, if Voyager wants to continue staking or change something, that has to be approved by the committee first. The committee can object to anything Voyager wants to do regarding changing their staking practices with crypto. So the question about how are costs and expenses being reduced, Michael, who's in charge of the financials, basically is saying, we are looking into this. We've looked into this. We know exactly how much they need to continue, what their expenses are. And my take is that Michael's saying they're not going to get away with anything that is unnecessary. The question, when will we know who the bidders are? Basically, we won't. We'll just know who wins. So that concludes their first town hall. This is the committee's Twitter, which you should definitely follow. Any questions can be submitted to voyagerUCC at EPIQglobal.com. Thanks for watching, guys, and make sure to subscribe if you want to catch the updates for Voyager, and obviously I'm making updates for Celsius as well. Thanks for watching. Until next time, talk with you soon, and bye for now.